Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. And as always, I say I'm here with someone very special today. And it's true this time, as it is almost every single time that I say it, because this is somebody who I mean, we've all been on our own journeys. His journey is, I don't know if it's been, we'll find out in this episode how long his journey's been going properly in the independent media. But we met up about 2021. And then over the next few years, there were lots of different times where we had conversations about different subjects which mattered. You've always been on. He's always been on the same scene, and from the start. And I have a lot of respect for him because he's someone who speaks openly and honestly about the subjects. Hrvoje Morić. Listen, I worry, Hrvoje, how I pronounce your name all of the time. From the first moment that I've ever seen your name, I think everybody on the independent media does this. They look at your name and they go, "Oh my God, what does that mean? What do these symbols mean?" And then they try and say it, and they probably always stumble, stutter, all of it. How do I do? How do I do? If I was to say, I would say it would probably be pronounced properly. Avoye, avoye, no. Oh, you like the last one. Hrvoje
I think well
Morić.
with the last name it should be Morić, like the
Morić.
Croatian, the Luka Modric, right? So
Yes.
Morić, as you pronounce it, my first name passes Hrvoje. We would say in Croatian Hrvoje. Hrvoje is fine.
Hrvoje.
Morić. So there you go.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
means Croat. My name literally
Oh,
means
really?
Croat. So
One of my best friends' last name was Buddha. He was a Hungarian guy, so you can imagine where his family. The H at the end, the silent H. Should that C have a little? Does it have a little wispy
it
bit
has an
or something?
accent in Croatian
Do
to
you know
signify.
what is that? What that C is called?
No, it's just ch. It's got a little
J.
accent where you ch.
J. I like it. I like it. I like it. But I'm sure you've had a lot of that through your time. And so you've got, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Croatia or did you grow up in Spain or Mexico or America or where? Because you seem like a man of the world. It seems really, really correct that you have geopolitics and empire because geopolitics and empire is like kind of what you live by the look of it, around the world a lot. So where were you born?
I was a humanoid. I came from a laboratory. No, I'm just kidding. I always like to as flash my. I got my three passports. Check it out: U.S.,
Ooh.
Mexico,
Ah,
Croatia.
all
International
right.
man. But yeah. I was born in Chicago, so Illinois, American. But my parents were immigrants
Bill
from.
Bryson's home.
I don't actually. Bill Bryson. I don't
Oh, he's a
know.
famous writer. Famous writer.
Yeah, and so yeah, but my parents were from immigrants from Yugoslavia, Croatia, and we went back and forth a couple times. So I spoke Croatian in the home. I'm fluent, and I went to fifth grade in Croatia. We moved back to America, and then I went to high school 2 years in Croatia, and then we moved back. We kept trying to
Oh,
move back,
that's useful.
and then I did my undergrad in Illinois in history and education,
But we'll
and then
get there. A
yeah.
question though is that do you think that learning so comprehensively learning as well? I mean, studying in Croatia, but learning a language early on made it very much easier for you to pick up languages afterwards, or were you still? It was that kind of still base level language, and it's still hard to learn another one on top.
Well, it can be both, and it depends on how old one is and how interested one is. I think having a second language makes it much easier. Also, being a little bit musical, there's a link between, I think, playing music and language learning.
Easy
So
to
yeah,
learn
most
a
definitely.
song, that's for sure, in another
Yeah, because
language.
you kind of have that tone, that eye for tone when you speak or play. So
So yeah, so you grew up in America and Croatia and America and Croatia and America, and then now you're down south though.
yeah, in Mexico, I mean, I ended up living in Mongolia with the Peace Corps. Um,
Ooh.
so, after I did my undergrad in Illinois, I thought I wanted to leave America. And the best ticket out was John F. Kennedy's Peace Corps because they didn't pay you anything, but they pay all your expenses and you get a couple thousand at the end of the year. And so I went off to Mongolia, living in the Gobi and a yurt. And then after that, I did masters in Geneva, Switzerland, and then I got hired. I was looking for a job anywhere in the world, and they offered me a job in Mexico, and I ended up staying. So
But it's a beautiful place, eh?
it's, I thought, hey, I was looking at jobs in Saudi Arabia, Alaska, Afghanistan, Mongolia, and I thought, Mexico. I lived in Chicago. We all are very familiar with Mexican culture, and I thought, hey, I can learn Spanish. It's warm, tacos, pretty women.
Mm.
What's not to love? So.
I got the languages. It's warm. Tacos. There you go. Sold. Yeah, easy enough. Sold. And so, what did you train in eventually? Like when you were younger, you went to school in Croatia and America, but eventually, did you go to university?
Right. So in Illinois, I studied history and education. So basically, to be a high school teacher, and then my master's was Master's of International Relations at the Geneva School of Diplomacy, 2008, 2009. So basically, international relations was my field. And some of my professors, I had one of my professors was Dutch American international lawyer who was on Saddam Hussein's defense council. So he defended
Ooh,
Saddam
that's
Hussein.
spicy. I
Curtis
like it.
Dobler. His name is Curtis Dobler. He's still around. Alfred de Zayas, who's been on my podcast, he's the great grandson of Cuba's president, and um, he was a senior UN lawyer. He's been on RT. Very interesting guy. Yasser Arafat's brother-in-law was my professor as well in Geneva. So a lot of funky folks like that. So yeah, international relations history is my background.
Yeah, Illinois is it's got rich in German and Dutch heritage. There's lots of German and Dutch around that way. I kind of follow his, family trees sometimes that seem to conveniently end up in the same areas. The same communities end up in the same areas, hang around with the same parts of the family. So it's interesting that too. What was Illinois like?
I mean, Chicago suburbs, it's fine. It's nice, but I was always I wanted to see the world, and I get kind of bored with when things are too sterile. Even Switzerland after a while it's too perfect. And I kind
Yeah.
of I like things rough around the edges. So, that's when I went off to Mongolia here, Mexico. I quit my job in 2017. I got offered a job in Kazakhstan, and so I lived in Kazakhstan for 3 years, worked technically for 4 years. The last year was from home here during COVID, but we lived on the northern edge of Kazakhstan where it was super cold. And we lived close to the polygon. Actually, it's the principal Soviet nuclear test site where Stalin
Mm.
dropped the first bomb in 49. And so it's an 18,000 square kilometer patch of land known as the polygon. And I was living only 100 kilometers from there. So actually, I went in with some of the scientists and stood on one of the ground zeros, and right before that, I went to Russia for 3 weeks with a group of Americans, and we hung out with Gorbachev for 2 hours, and folks like that, Vladimir Posner, who's a well-known Russian um, journalist. So yeah, I kind of like living dangerously.
Yeah. So how old are you then? You're a bit older than me. Do you mind me asking? Do you want to
Let's
give it
say I'm in
away?
my very early 40s. Let's say that.
I think I know what that means. I'm in my late 30s, so I can get out like that. No, so I mean that is just that kind of says everything about you, doesn't it? There's all of these opportunities are all around the world, and so are you living like a globalist?
What does that mean, living like a globalist?
Living around the globe. I mean, I'm someone who I love. I sometimes see that as myself. I say that to myself when I'm like I'm so happy. there's a lot of animosity towards people from other countries in my country and in America. Immigration, it's been forced upon countries. It's an agenda, and so that turns, and they use that fact that we turn against each other on the ground. And I don't tend to do that. I tend to really enjoy meeting people from other countries and all around the world and having conversations. But I have to find, I find I have to like bridge the divide early. I have to give them a lot of, I have to be very open with them, people from other countries, so that they can feel at ease with me, because a lot of people feel like they're under attack automatically. They're switched on. But I don't feel like that. I don't feel like, I love talking about the differences in cultures and stuff. So I see myself in the sense of, in that sense, I'm living like a globalist. You know, I just kind of like, I love the people of the world. I see not so much different. Is that what you've always been like? Someone who just international man of mystery?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been like that. I mean, that's why, I go to I never like going anywhere for a week, like on vacation. I honestly don't like that. When we go to, even when I wasn't living in Croatia, when we went for vacation to Croatia, we literally went for one or 2 or 3 months, and because I want to know the local culture. And so that's why I go to Mongolia and I become one with the Mongol. I was at one point, I have the certificate. I was intermediate in Mongolian. I had a Mongolian girlfriend. No one around me spoke English. I lived in a yurt. I dressed like a Mongol. I ate like them. I broke bread with them. And, I want to assimilate, right?
Mhm.
And even in Geneva, I studied with my sibling in our apartment, like on the
You weren't
weekends.
dressed as a Mongol at that point.
No, but it's funny enough. I did have a Mongolian girlfriend in Switzerland, among other girlfriends. I dated a Montenegrin Olympic swimmer as well in Geneva. But in our apartment, it was like a mini UN on the weekends, like all of our classmates, and it was literally you had a guy from Saudi Arabia, Africa, Swedish blonde chick. It's just like Indian dudes. It's just kind of like, yeah, and that's how I still am today. And it just what you were describing though brought a thought to me. Some of the Mexicans that I know that are attuned to politics, I'm starting to sense their irritation with gringos, with foreigners. So it's kind of like I don't have any of that against anyone, but it's interesting now because of what's going on with Trump and USA and Mexico. Not all Mexicans. There are many that just don't care that you're a foreigner. It's like, great, nice, nice, welcome. But there are some that are kind of like they have a what do you call it? An issue. And I
They
think,
see Gringolandia for what it is.
yeah, but I think I don't like playing that game though, because as you said, they want us to fight with each other. Like I'm trying to explain to some Mexicans last week. I was at a pizza place. And very smart Mexican guy. He's lived in Italy, New York, all over the place. Perfect English. And he's getting all his panties in a bunch with Trump. I'm trying to explain, look,
Pennies in a bunch. I like.
none of this has anything to do with Trump. They've got you in that 2 minutes hate Emmanuel Goldstein,
Mhm.
Orwell
Oh,
space.
don't mention Emmanuel Goldstein on this show. He's right out. Go on.
But it's like you're trying to explain to them, they've fallen for it. It's like this has nothing to do with Trump. This is a plan from, I'm sure you guys know very well on your podcast, the Technate, 1930s technocracy plan to integrate North America. But meanwhile, you've got them hating Americans and hating Trump. It's like Trump wants to take over Mexico. It's like it's got nothing to do with him. And so, yeah.
It's always been heading towards this sort of like them building the American pole of globalism, though. I mean, that's always been heading that way, but we're so close to it all now. So there's two points there. Well, first of all, maybe to continue, I hope I remember the second point. Maybe to continue. Do you find that a little bit difficult? I find it taxing on our part of the media sphere, on the independent media, how difficult the immigration debate is, because I have quite a similar idea of what should happen. It's very similar to a lot of the people who are very angry, but there is a lot of the discourse that just leans over to the boundaries of pleasant, polite conversation and diplomacy, and ends up into a place where people are just being racist in that sense. There's also a lot of rise of there's been a lot of like I've seen a lot of more Nazi Twitter accounts and stuff being more brazen at the moment. So do you feel the same? Are you in that same sort of area? It's really frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't like. I've had some of my listeners where they are openly racist, and we can. I always ask for us to have a standard, to be more erudite, to be more couth, to be more nuanced, diplomatic. We can discuss in a very erudite fashion Zionism and all that stuff, right? But I found very few of the critics who basically they fall into a camp where they hate the Jews across the board and they're pro Nazi and Hitler. And for me, it's like, you study, I default to people like Mark Passio, or, my grandpa was a prisoner of the Nazis. And I've listened to primary source material of the Nazi regime, which says, I'm a Slav 100%,
Hmm.
that we are Untermensch.
Not good people. Yeah, not
And it's
good
like,
people in
like
the Nazi
according to
world.
the Nazis and Hitler, it's just like, and they try to tell me, and like,
They're not
oh,
sending their best, is what Hitler said, I think.
yeah, and it's like how their minds are warped with this Hitler Nazi worship. And then you look at the occult angle. Hitler wanted a world empire. It was cult. He was backed by the Anglo-American eugenicists, etc. And so that's my beef with these people that you're mentioning, that where they're falling into this madness of uh, racist stuff. And as a Christian, I default. I'm a big fan of Ken Ham, who's this Australian evangelist, Answers in Genesis, and I believe his explanation is both biblical and factually true. Where he says there's only one human race. So the colors, black, the spectrum from really black Africans to Chinese to white, that's just the pigment on the what do you call it, melanin on our skin. We're all one race, so it's not like separate races. It's all just one. But that over time, people broke off to different parts of the world and developed different looks, micro evolution, right? And habits, and which culture is basically habits that were developed over time. So back to your point is that, yeah, I mean, I think we should just focus on having legal immigration, as we always have had, which should be loose. I was just thinking the other day, it's almost like, but globalism wants regional regions, right? And so their project is Babylon, mix everything together. And I like the world where we don't even need passports, going back before World War One. And I was just thinking, it's like now they're creating a second passport with the stuff that's going on. I just read in the UK, this Christian podcaster wanted to go to the UK. I don't know his name, but he spent thousands of dollars purchasing air tickets and hotels. And just last month, the UK activated its what is it, the travel authorization. And
Yeah.
so he applied for it and he got rejected. So it's like you have a passport, but now they put a second system where it's like you have two passports. You have to ask for permission now to enter the country. And because of thought crime, they don't like what he's all about. UK said, no, you cannot come into UK. Europe is activating it now. The US has a version, and other countries will be deploying it. And so I just don't like how any of the where all of this is going. But I mean, back to your earlier point, we should have legal migration, but let plenty of people be able to come in. If they're troublemakers, kick them out. But finding a middle ground, no.
Yeah, I'm with you in loads of different parts of I do think that there's like a point where if you let people go to the problem is that this is, I suppose, however much we try and cut up kind of late stage capitalism issue, because certain countries are wealthier than other countries, and so if you open up all of the borders, you will have suddenly people from not wealthy countries go straight over to here and there and everywhere, etc. And that is kind of what capitalism has always been about as well, because I mean, that's what the Industrial Revolution America was built on the backs of immigrants. We know that as obvious. Everybody I speak to in America is like a couple of generations down. You don't even have to look that far. There's plenty of variance. Same with most families around. But I really I suppose instead of because I did a little piece on Eric Weinstein's work for the UN on the migrant program, and he called that migration for the benefit of all. But I really do think to protect culture and community to an extent, it should be migration for the benefit of the native workers. That's really what it should be. There should be a point where it's like, okay, we cannot have any form of migration that makes the people there on the ground poorer. Nothing like that. We have to find a way around that. And that seems like a fair deal in my book. But a lot of people are driven to this subject just on the backs of uh, the anger that comes from it and the ability to attach that anger to racist sort of connotation.
I mean, I'd use my example of me in Mexico as a perfect example. You know, I came in 2010. It was year by year. I'm like, you know, I did have, you know, full-time job and tenure at the school, but I married, you know, a couple of years later, bought a home, became a naturalized citizen 8 years after coming to Mexico. And it's kind of like there were rules. I learned the language. I lived and worked here. I paid taxes to the Mexican government and freaking American government. And and you know, I learned the language. I spent enough time, became naturalized, and I think that's an example of what the system countries should operate, right? Um, but if you know if you don't if you're here illegally, I mean, how can you? Or if you've overstayed, um, you know, other countries deport you. So
Yeah, indeed, indeed. But it's being a fan of the world means that you want to be able to get around, and I don't think they want that anymore. I think we both realize that. But how inevitable do you think it is? I'd like to ask some questions about like technology eventually. Talk about technology and technocracy eventually. Personally too, but how do you think it will develop? I'm starting to believe that technocratic globalism, a certain period of it is inevitable. And I also know that everything that goes up must come down, and there's rise and falls to every single, paradigm has been all throughout history. Um, do you agree with that? Do you think that we are inevitably walking towards globalism? But how long do you think something like that will last?
yeah, I mean, that's the topic I'm most interested in because I focus a lot on world government is my biggest interest because I'm coming at this from as a Christian, so world government globalism plus the technocracy, the social credit, the algorithm ghetto is you know my past guest Edwin Black calls it, and I'm always going back and forth. It's hard to gauge, but I think it is inevitable. Um, I think you know God wins in the end. You know Christ, his second coming. So good wins in the end. I don't know when that is. Nobody does. So good wins in the end. But sometimes I think what they're trying to do is so insane. And at best, they might succeed with. I don't know if you know the 1985 movie Brazil,
Hmm.
where they'll, or, you know, Joe Allen, who's expert on transhumanism. He's got a great book, Dark Eon.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he says that it's basically going to be a mix between technocracy and idiocracy, like the movie Brazil. And so I kind of feel like that's the best they're going to get because, I mean, you look at the world, how things work, you know, places like here in Mexico where, so I think they are going to advance a certain amount of stuff, like a minimum of digital technocracy. that is going to make our life painful. But I mean, you look again using Mexico as an example. You've got natural, hurricanes and uh, extreme heat and extreme cold and tsunamis and earthquakes and which disrupt these precarious technological systems. I went to the People's Reset not long ago, and driving a couple hours to get there. And they want you to buy those tags so you don't pay for the toll, but half the time the tags don't scan, to open up the what do you call it, to let you pass. And the elevator at the hotel was not working. It's like not a lot of these things just don't work. And so, but they are advancing with things like digital ID. I last year I couldn't renew my debit card. It's still not renewed. It expired. And I went down to the bank and I used official government ID. I've done it many times before where I've renewed the same debit card with my US and Mexican passport. And this time they said, no, you can't. You got to do it with your Mexican voter card. And I never
Oh,
took one out because I don't vote. And I never
oh,
took out
dirty rotters.
and I never took out a Mexican voter card because I knew that the Mexican voter card it's the most complete identification document in Mexico. It's got more information than other documents, and that I knew would be used as the basis for the digital ID. And here we are a couple months ago. They said you can only use your Mexican voter ID because when you get it from the government, they take your biometrics. And that same week, the UN reported that they want you to link your bank accounts to your digital ID. And so I was literally experiencing that here in Mexico. So, and I told the guy, like, I opened my account as an American. Can you renew it as an American? He's like, well, let's try. Give me your US passport. He's like, oh, but the system asks for your Mexican visa. I'm like, I don't have a Mexican visa because I'm a Mexican citizen. So it's like really Kafkaesque. It's like, as a Mexican citizen, you have to use your Mexican voter ID.
Oh,
And so,
dirty.
and now they're asking, they've got a population registry number that all of us have to have, foreigners or locals to do business and stuff, or, open bank accounts. Now this year they're mandating it to be biometric. The vehicle emissions tests, in the U.S., we've had that since I was a kid. You take your car every year to
Mhm.
make sure it passes the vehicle emissions. That didn't exist in Mexico until 2 years ago. And so 2 years ago, I had to take my car to vehicle emissions here in Mexico. And if it doesn't pass the emissions, you can't drive your car. And I've actually seen green police here on the streets of
Wow.
Mexico give tickets to people who didn't, they can check your license plate and see that you didn't do the vehicle emissions and give you tickets. So these are just, I can give you many more examples of how they are succeeding, but I feel like it's going to be, Kafkaesque, really.
So I think a lot of this sounds like stopgap as well. Is will be a difference in the technology that they will depend on in the future to what we have now. So, and this is something that I might have mentioned a couple of times. I went when I was in Chile. I was in Santiago one time, and I was doing a police audit. I do police auditing, like First Amendment auditing, they call it in the States. I do police auditing in the UK. So, because I was in Santiago, I thought I'd do the same there. I'd go around and it turned out the police were pretty, they're all wearing the craziest stuff. I saw 14, 15 policemen. None of them bothered me. All of them polite. Homeless people, however, chased me down the street and threw things. But while I was walking through one of the parks, in one of near Concord, in a really nice area of Santiago. I can't remember what it's called. There were these trees, and they had something nailed to them. They it was a little code, QR code. They had nailed QR codes to all the trees, so people could use this app to tell what the tree was. And it was very interesting, but it was very much a stopgap in between the technology of the future and where we've been in the past. In the past, people would have had to sit there with a book written by a tree expert, gone through it all in detail. Now they have to scan a QR code that has to be nailed to the tree. But in the future, it's very much going to be whatever you have can tell you what that tree is.
Like augmented reality, right?
Yeah,
Augmented.
yeah. And we go in the same way with identity, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean now, we had this spat of meetings, the World Governments Summit. Isn't it interesting how they changed from World Government Summit to World Governments Summit, or the WEF, and Larry Ellison and Tony Blair talking about no more passwords. It's just going to be biometric logins, and so again, they're going to have us by the testicles there. It's not going to be no passwords. So no sort of, they're cutting off a lot of the loopholes. I mean, even the clerk at the bank told me that in the past, renewing my debit card, it used to be a little more decentralized. They had it like different options. And he said now it's like, sorry, the government and the bank said you can only use your Mexican voter card. They're cutting off all the off ramps, and we're seeing that everywhere. And you're going to be forced, facial recognition. We're seeing that now at the airports in the U.S. It's optional, but then it's not going to be optional. But I also wonder, again, how successful so I think they're focusing on the core functions of our life, which I think is the danger, where banking, being able to receive payment and use payment, travel, so, airports, and me being able to go back to my other home of Croatia and to see my family. And maybe one day I won't be allowed, to go. And lately,
I'm
honestly,
expecting that. I think I'm reckoning 20 years, the vaccine passports will be in place everywhere.
yeah, and you literally won't be able to get on a plane, or you'll be priced out of it. I mean, here's another example. In my banking app right now, with another account here in Mexico, you log in and there's a sustainability tab, and you click on it, and it opens up a page which says they're calculating my carbon footprint, and it says like 10,000 kilograms, and it's got categories
the value of your soul.
It is, and like
doing.
I use mostly cash, so they have very little for now, and it says electricity, gasoline, food, energy, and it even says, because I pay for my gasoline in cash, they say, oh, upload your gas receipts to the app so we can better calculate your carbon footprint. And I think this is now informational, but just the fact that it's already operational, the informational aspect in my app, and it's calculating each bank customer's carbon footprint, I can imagine the second stage is where they start enforcing it. So I just think of a silly example. Like if I go to visit folks in the US, I buy a $500 plane ticket, $500. But if I want to buy a second plane ticket, they're going to say, okay, it's $500, but you've reached your carbon limit. The carbon footprint tax is going to be another $500, so it's going to cost $1,000, and so on and so forth. They'll do this with meat. They'll do this with whatever they like, gasoline, and the rich, the wealthy will be able to live. For them, money's not an issue, but us, the middle class and lower, I won't be able to buy that second flight or that second steak or that second refill of gasoline in my tank. And so I think that's where the danger is going to be. There'll still be, I think, loopholes. I just opened my podcast in Spanish, and I interviewed a Mexican activist and rock and roller, and I asked him about this and the cartels. Where there's a lot of cash that's used in Mexico and cartels. And he was of the opinion that he thinks that the clandestine sphere, the bootleg, the black market sphere, that in history they always have adapted. That like cartels or people who try to live off the system will find ways to adapt and continue living outside the system. So there's some hope there.
Yeah. But I mean, that's still learning how to live outside the system in that sense is, of course, the bootlegger life, which is it has many dangers attached to it, and is just cloaked within a constant legality wherever you look. So I don't I'm wondering. So I mean that's really interesting to get to there because I really what I want to ask is what was technology like for you when you were younger? Was it, were you did you have a lot of technology around? For me, I mean I had like game system after game system. I was born in 1980, so I had like the Atari when I was about 5, 6 with the first ever joystick, and then Commodore 16 plus. I had the NES, Mega Drives, SNES, etc., for game systems, but also technology in general. My dad was really into video. He was really into editing. So I had all that around me. How was technology for you when you were a kid?
No, nothing special. I mean, I had the 8-bit Nintendo, which I think led to me, why I have glasses probably, and the 16-bit Super Nintendo. Um, and we had TV, but beyond that, and in the 90s, we did get when I was in junior high, desktop computer, Compaq, I think Packard Bell or Compaq, and then I'd be disassembling, just the basic stuff, opening it up, hard drives in and out, learning how it works. So nothing too crazy, and I kind of enjoyed life before the cell phone. I mean, that's the other thing now. They're obligating us to use the smartphone. I just thought of recent examples. The two-factor authentication apps. I used to have it on the desktop, on the smartphone. They removed the desktop version, so now it's only smartphone. Another fintech company this morning that I use in rare occasion in Latin America, they just sent an email saying you were killing our web version. So you can only use it on the app on the phone. So they're driving everyone to the phone, and so you will not be able to function without the phone. And I'm wondering if they're going to try to get rid of the phone and make force us to have some implant function in society. But just going back, I just enjoyed life before the internet. I had a guitar, I'd go to concerts, so forth. So,
Guitarist, is it?
huh?
You were in a band?
No, just for fun, playing acoustic guitar. I got my Turkish oud, which I used to doodle on, but these
Yeah.
days not so much time, and so it just kind of collects dust there.
Yeah. Still, I know. I feel guilty. I picked up my guitar today. I had a little playing, and I felt really, really guilty that I haven't been playing it for time. I've been too busy with the work. So, what about now? How do you feel about technology now? As we enter the technocracy, the globalism, you see all of this technology that they're trying to force upon us. What parts of it do you like, and which parts of it do you think we could do without?
Man, really honestly, I mean, it's a love-hate relationship, right? The best of times, the worst of times, where I'd be I enjoy doing what we're doing now, right? Being able to research and see what's happening in the world and have calls with people. That's fun. I hate the smartphone. Um, Kindle this morning. Did I mention already the Kindle where I was rushing to download all of my Kindle purchases because in a week's time you won't be able to download them anymore. Amazon just made this new rule. So you're able to go into Amazon account and download, the actual book file to your computer.
Hmm.
They're ending that. So now it'll only be available on your Kindle
Oh,
device or the Kindle app on your
constantly
computer.
needy.
And that's just an example of so I'd actually be happy to go live in a small village in Mexico or Croatia in completely analog world at this point. I just feel like technology is trying to dehumanize us further and further. And I don't use apps like my wife installed on her phone. We never, people use apps to have their food delivered. We don't do that. I'll call the food delivery place directly, and if they delivered, deliver. But I felt so uncomfortable ordering food from this app. I think here it's called Didi in Mexico. It's just alien for me, even still at this stage. I don't do QR codes, um, and so I'm still holding on to the basic aspects of technology. But VR, virtual reality, I've tried the Oculus VR once for video games, and I just can't. It's too much for me. I feel like I'm crossing a line. I feel dirty going
I
that far into
I
technology.
think I think you're finding that you're an old man now. That's it. you're done. I'm sorry, it's a sign. When you start to get grumpy at it all and say, no, none of it's good. But it is, I'm, when you said you don't do QR codes in, when I was in Chile, they stopped doing menus. They stopped allowing menus in cafes and restaurants. You had to use QR codes. And so we'd be like, oh, I don't have a phone. And they would bring over a store phone. It's like sort of broken up, crack screen phone or wherever you were to order through there if you just had to. But eventually that won't be allowed. You know, this is what they're aiming to create. And it's a bit of a crazy one. So what are you up to then? You do the podcast. You've been doing lots of different. You've got lots of different groups. So you hang around with some fantastic people, having some. I love the fact that you're talking with Parallel Mike, who I'm a big fan of, and Monica Perez, who I'm a big fan of. Both of those are just fantastic in a cognitive distance, and that's fantastic. So what type of things are you doing at the moment? Where do you think you're going to focus over the coming time? And do you think that much of it'll like break through in now that the world's opening up?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I do geopolitics and empire. I just started the Spanish version, where from time to time I'll look to in Spanish interview get experts, Spanish speaking experts. We started the middle of last year cognitive dissonance once a month with Monica Perez and Parallel Mike. We do a roundtable every month, and then for our own paid subscribers, we do a recorded live Q&A session with subscribers. And then, yeah, the Independent Media Alliance formed a little after that last year, and so I was just sort of thrown into that. And I don't like to be part of any groups formally, generally, so I kind of like to think I'm just loosely affiliated with these different
Everybody.
things, and so pretty much just continue charging ahead, interviewing people. I do a weekly commentary where I sort of round up all of the news, I aggregate stuff, and then produce a commentary on just my thoughts briefly on what I thought was most important of the week. And just I feel like just keep doing what we're doing, like each of us in our own different ways, right? Johnny Vedmore's, me, and others, and I feel like we're little battleships, little guerrilla battleships, and you've got the big monster beast, and we're just a thousand cuts. We're giving each of us little in our own different ways. Throwing cutting. Was it a Hotel California song? Stabbing with the steely knives, but you just can't kill the beast.
If you were to give people who are in the indie media some advice, what would you say are the best platforms getting out there at the moment? And what are the ones where you're having most success? Because these are things that I don't think we share enough.
Well, on one hand, I feel that there's some super backdoor switch that on whatever platform, the engineers deep in the back rooms of the DARPA internet, whether it's in the Russian or China or American or EU sphere, there's a volume knob where they can just turn you down. Where I saw even on Telegram, people thought, oh, Telegram is Russian, it's Durov. No, who cares? There was, a growth on many platforms on my Telegram. Now I'm stuck. It's strange because it was growing, upward. And literally for the past 2 or 3 years, it will not move beyond 13,500 subscribers,
Mm,
which is strange because if it were
about
organic,
that.
it would at least, over 2 years go to 14,000, 14,500, even slowly. But it does not move from 13,500. It's been there for years, which is strange. That doesn't make any sense. And so I feel like on any platform you name it, they have like a volume, a knob where they can just shadow ban you. So no
Mhm.
one, they can not make you not grow anymore. And I was going to comment, I've seen other people who are podcasters who are just starting out and have smaller accounts and they're trying to grow, and some of them are doing really great work, and I see how they're stuck. Like they cannot get, say, to, I don't have a massive following. Like I'm on one tier, and then you've got bigger tiers, and it's like I feel like we're all stuck. And I'm kind of grateful that I was able to get to where I got to
Hmm.
this tier
You same here, man. Same.
before they shut everything off. Because if I were, I might not. People starting out might not get traction. That's not to say that people shouldn't try. Substack is working pretty good. Um, I'd still open a tele. I mean, I have the decentralized guerrilla warfare mentality where use whatever platform that you can be on. So that's why my video podcasts are published to BitChute, Brighteon, Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, YouTube, X, Substack, Telegram. I'm on
Do you have
Gab.
to go through each one of those, or do you centralize uploading in some way?
There's software like people services like Content Safe that people can pay. I can't afford to. I have to do everything myself, so I can't afford. I don't have enough money to pay to anyone else as an assistant, but I don't find it too cumbersome. Because I just open up the tabs quickly, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah. Same here.
my copy, and I just copy paste and upload the video. It's not really that much time, so I just upload the file. Upload up 5 times. It doesn't take that long. Um, but X was working for a while, but even though I'm paying for my main account to be able to upload the full video to X, you can still see that you're not getting as much traction. So I just view it like a casino. It's basically, what do you call that? The game at the
Slot
casino.
machine.
It's a slot machine basically now. So I'm just throwing stuff out there and pulling on the slot. And sometimes you're hoping that someone who's following you, shares it, and then it gets a life of its own, which happens sometimes. So it's basically playing the slot machine or Russian roulette.
I feel like I should tell you a story. Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's a quite an interesting story. It's had me thinking for a few years. This is about 2023, I think. I got contacted by a big YouTuber, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the channel. That's honest. Um, really, like every video's got 10 million to 20 million views, like top level, but there's only like 20, 30 videos. It's super well produced, over the top. Yeah. Lots of reasons why to suspect, like, got a special key to the palace. If you're talking about having a knob that you can turn up to allow you a certain amount. And this guy showed me a little bit behind the curtain. I'm gonna tell you a story that he told me. We had a 3.5, 4 hour chat. He was interested in me helping him out in some way, finding content that no one else can find, because I'm very good at my investigating in ways that no one else can work out. So I find things. And that was very useful to the type of, he was doing kind of like hit piece type stuff, and he was very useful. So he wanted to have a conversation, see if we could work together. And I was like, I need some work on the side. Like I'd prefer to do something which is content creation. Maybe I can help the guy out. We had a conversation, and he told me about his interaction with YouTube and how he ended up getting so many views. And he told me what something that goes towards your knob turning metaphor. He said that he and his friends had worked out that the word gay was was demonetizing his videos. If it, in the keywords that you tag in on YouTube, if you put gay or homosexual, something along those lines, it would demonetize. Didn't work. They had to go through a process. Like certain videos were being demonetized and certain videos weren't. So they were trying to cross-reference which key. So they were uploading little videos with certain keywords in, and checking which ones got demonetized automatically and checking which ones didn't get demonetized automatically. And eventually they worked out that the word gay got their stuff demonetized automatically on YouTube, which is really crazy because YouTube's so gay. um, and he said it was because they had outsourced, YouTube had outsourced a lot of their work over to places like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and these other sort of states. And when they were marking down in these countries, they were a little bit more strict than you would be in the West. So that element was coming out. And because they had discovered this, they went to YouTube and they kind of said, "Hey, look at this, look at what you're doing." And YouTube said, "Oh, we'll open up your channel properly if you don't say anything about it." So, boom, that dial got turned all the way up. He had millions and millions and millions and millions. So the dial is, in my opinion, from my own experience, same thing. I mean, I can. I'm on so many platforms where I know where my headroom is. Some of them are crushing me. You know, Facebook is one of those ones that's habitually crushed me for years. Can't even advertise on there, anything like that. I've tried just little test. No money taken, no advert shown. Runs the entire advert without showing anybody and doesn't take any money at the end of it. Just the way it is. So yeah, I thought that story, I found it interesting, but I wasn't sure if it was true. But more people have said what you said to me.
The dial of we call it the dial of destiny. I just watched the last Indiana Jones movie, Dial of Destiny.
Oh
So
my God.
there
There's
you
one
go.
after the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, there is, and I barely watch movies. They're not even movies. I barely watch satanic occult propaganda anymore. But found some time, and Indiana Jones is Indiana Jones. But what are you gonna do? But I still find it worthwhile doing what we're doing and throwing the information out there. And there still is an audience like for me, and so somehow they're getting my stuff, and so I'll keep doing it until it's no longer tenable, and I'll have to go find some other, line of work. So that's just how it is.
I'm kind of hoping that it looks like it's going in the opposite direction to that. I mean, that dial, well, when people say Elon Musk took over and he opened up X, that's just not true. He switched the dial up for a short amount of time and then turned it back down again, but into a less extreme form and scattered to a different enemy. So is a one.
That was during the rebranding of the Guard. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of more people are pointing out now where they had the old legacy media. I mean, we can talk about folks like Alex Jones. It's just like I'm having a field day every day watching David Icke's quote comments on Alex Jones, and I'm not down with, I find a portion of Icke's analysis is accurate. I'm not down with his philosophical religious views, but he's on point when it comes to this, and it's clear now where they took the legacy media, Fox, CNN. Tucker Carlson was an op. It's not like they sell it to us. This was all just organic. Tucker was fired. Joe Rogan randomly. Some of them may have organically started, but then they were taken towards another direction. Or I think others like Tucker. I mean, all CIA backgrounds, Andrew Tate, Jones,
Went to
and
go see if he could work for the CIA, and then just they said no. I think they probably said yes.
right. I mean, even if that was true, it doesn't have to be always CIA. There's other agencies and stuff,
Yeah.
but you look at the where we are now. All of these folks have grouped together: Russell Brand, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Musk, Jones, and there's a whole, Benny Johnson, all these different names
Hmm.
where they've all been raised with so many followers. And it's like they are the new legacy media. Tucker
Mhm.
Carlson is like Fox 2.0. Alex Jones sounds like Fox 2.0 now.
Yeah.
And so
I call them
it's
the
clear.
neo mainstream media. I've been calling them for quite a while. It's
Yeah.
I find, yeah, Alex Jones is an incredible to watch nowadays. He looks like he's
It's
taken
I'm
almost
shocked like every day. I'm
unrecognizable.
like this is not the Alex Jones that I listened to. And, he was part of my inspiration of geopolitics and empire.
Mhm.
And now to like look at him like this is not like who is this guy? Is not Alex
No
Jones.
more heroes, man. Is we learn, don't we? There's
But
just no more heroes.
It's Pied Pipers. I like the term Pied Pipers. These are all Pied Pipers leading us into the forest to be slaughtered, basically. So
I found it very interesting to talk to Jones in purpose on in person on big L directly on one of those big X spaces, and they were messaging me behind the scenes. They were saying to me, the people who run the X space, "Can you interrupt him, please?" Because I was the only one who was interrupting people. so they were getting me to interrupt Alex Jones because he just goes off on his frog tangents and stuff. And I wanted to see how his mind worked to an extent. So I was listening to what he was saying about the here and now. It's all gobbledygook, just gobbledygook. It's a long, like anything he talks about from say 1997, 1995 to 1997 to now, just gobbledygook. And if you get him talking about the past, suddenly he becomes the most coherent historian you can imagine. And I think that might be like a sign there that there's two different people. There's the Alex Jones who understood history to such a large degree that he was able to do something that was so long sighted that it's impressive for what it is as a propaganda campaign for an intelligence agency. Because what do you think, Alex Jones? I mean, he's now a mouthpiece for is every single video starts with Elon Musk or Donald Trump, and then he goes President Trump. And
no, I mean I'll tune in from time to time just to see what's going on in Infowars, and like literally a few weeks ago I tune in, literally like it's not even a joke. We're not exaggerating. Literally for 30 minutes, he's like lauding Elon Musk, and I just can't, you know, I can't square it. And I feel like the again, it's a long game that they play. I don't know exactly how they do it, whether Jones was in on it from the beginning, or whether they've somehow mind controlled him, or they've replaced him, or it's just
bit of
been
column
some
A,
sort
bit of
of,
column B, bit of column C.
or it's a blackmail. I think there's different categories where I think there are people who from the outset, and I think these globalists are occultists, right? They're trying to the work that they're doing is a cult, masonry and all this other stuff. And so some of these one category of these actors are initiated into this, occult as agents, and they know what they're doing from the beginning. And I think what they have to do is they have to lay some initial groundwork. Again, the give some mouse to the cheese to get the mouse onto the trap, and so they invest years, decades in that first phase because the final phase is going to be so important and so crucial and so delicate to implement that they have to do a really good job, with the first phase of getting the mice onto the farm for that, moment when they snap, which is what they're doing now. Musk,
Yeah.
MAGA, Trump, you name it. And so I think that's that strategy. So, and it's like Orwell. I just thought the other day, was it O'Brien, what's the book in 1984? It's literally 1984, where Jones is like that book that Winston reads, and then it turns out it was written by O'Brien, by the system, as a way to catch anyone thinking outside the box. And it's like Jones is actually, was created by O'Brien, these Jones type figures. And or there's also some of us are now getting heat for questioning MAGA Musk, Trump. I've had one of my listeners say, "Your pessimism is unbearable." I'm like, "Your hopium is unbearable," and I think the other part of it, another category is whether it's content creator like Jones or content consumers like they're psychologically torturing us. They're taking our heads and putting them underwater, and then pulling us back up again. And for a segment of the populace, they can't take anymore. They can't take this torture, and they need to have some good news, or they're going to literally have a schizophrenic nervous breakdown. And so they have to cling on to the MAGA, Trump is going to save us. Like, I can't take it anymore. I need to believe Trump is going to save me, or I'm going to go crazy. And I think there's this portion of people that just can't handle the torture.
It's an amazing setup, though. It's an amazing setup. They've done an amazing job.
You got to hand it to them.
It's exactly what if I had I mean I could have probably it would probably be about 6 months before the election I could predict that these people would be aligned in loads of different ways. But it seems obvious what they wanted early on. As soon as the elections actually began, it was just incredible how quickly it moved. Like it already been planned for many years beforehand. I gotta be careful. I was thinking when you were talking about your cult, I'm sitting here in my black shirt in the darkness with my wine glass with dark liquid in, sipping away like I'm an occultist myself. But I'm not, I promise. It's actually dandelion and burdock in here. It's very nice. It's not even wine. I find this really interesting where we are now. Elon Musk is all over the news. They have made him into something that people just completely believe in. Like you say, hopium all round. Everyone's got the hopium. You can barely criticize any of these people. Do you think that Trump will make it through the whole term? And are we just like, what does, this is a really, really interesting question. I don't know if you'd be interested in positing this, but what does the next Republican presidential candidate look like?
I don't see any reason to think Trump won't make it through because, again, I'm arguing that Trump is the new world order. So I think he'll make it through. You're seeing a trend now in different countries to amend the Constitution to allow, I think in El Salvador they did it. In other countries, I can't, just in recent weeks has been reported. In the US, I've read recent reports of how interest has been expressed to allow someone to run a third term. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to change the Constitution to allow Trump to run the third time. He's said tongue in cheek in the past, it might be the last election or he might be around longer. I've had people on my podcasts or other people I've heard mention, maybe they'll put in, was it his daughter? What's her name? Is it Ivana Trump or
Ivanka?
No, that's his ex-wife, but his one I heard.
No, if Ivanka is his daughter, Ivana is his wife, I think. Ivanka is his...
I'm looking. I can't remember. No, Ivana Trump, and that's is it Ivanka? It's hard to.
Ivanka.
Here we go. Ivanka Trump. Yeah, that's the daughter. Imagine someone of that coming in, JD Vance.
With a nice Zionist husband. A husband that people have posited could be the Moshayak.
Yeah, Jared Kushner, but I think that won't be as important because I think the big picture is that they're installing technocracy, and that will be eliminating a lot of politicians. I mean, I just read in this space of this week, you've got Doge, which is a wrecking ball to install AI. Algocracy ruled by algorithm. Way back in March of 2020, I was on Spiros Kouros' show. I keep mentioning this, where I said COVID in March of 2020. I said the purpose of COVID was to install global algocracy ruled by algorithm. I was reading a Nick Bostrom paper where he said we need to have world government surveillance state run by AI, by algorithms. And now you had a couple of weeks ago Mark Andreessen and Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, hey, we should have government run by AI. I'm like, well, that's the plan. And Patrick Wood, thanks to reading his work and him pointing out that they want to cut human politicians, to cut the staff to install technocracy or algocracy, and that's what they're doing now. And so now they're talking about an EU Doge. And I kid you not, this morning, yesterday, I saw in Russia now reports where Russia wants to do something like Doge. And it's like, oh, wow, really?
You are quite correct and very astute to notice how quickly the Doge is turning into the installation of AI government, and they've already set up a platform. I was commenting on it the other day on X. It's AI GovBot, which looks at taking in information to create policy, and that type of stuff is obvious. It's a question of who, they're going to offer you something new that's equivalent to Klaus Schwab and his gang, but is not Klaus Schwab and his gang, and has no one who's responsible for the outcome, no ownership attached, nothing like that. It's almost perfect governance. All do action, no responsibility or ownership needs to be taken by those in power who implement the actions that decided by AI, and it's rolling out so quickly. Is that what the future look? Because I feel that there's been a sea change in how the foreign press are looking at Trump and these guys now. I think they're starting to accept, and even in America, they're starting to accept that the left is wrong in so many different ways. I think they're going to have a massive change. Is this the start of the change of the left in America? And is the rest of the world slowly turning towards being a bit more of a harsher capitalist in the model of Trump?
A little bit of both. Like it's a tidal wave, the Doge tidal wave we are just mentioning. So it's now going across the planet, and I think that sort of that thing that they have going on, that struggle with the left, they put it on the shelf and then they bring it out when they need it to get us to, this is why I don't pay much attention to. Honestly, it's not interesting for me. Like we mentioned at the beginning, this racism and migration and stuff, and these different knife attacks and shootings and racial issues and woke stuff. I feel like that's all like irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, and a lot of those items are distractions to get us to fight with each other while they're implementing the technocracy. So for me, you hear these knife attacks in Europe and whatever, Sweden and UK and this and that. Like, of course, they're not unimportant, but I feel like a lot of it is they generate this to get us at each other's throats. Look over there while we're doing digital ID and all this stuff. I'm forgetting your. Yeah,
But
so I think they are now. You're seeing many countries now get on board with the technocratic title wave. Seems to be the
well,
case. Yeah.
there's a couple of things there, because when you talk about, because I think that you're right, they take the left and right dynamic especially, and the different uh, opposing forces that those two allow. Um, they use that all of the time, but they can only do that and take it off the shelf and use it because it's actually not left and right paradigm that's going on. It's very centrist. Everybody's in a big blob in the center, and they're all trying to now take as much money on the top of a pyramid, really, than it is like different areas of the political spectrum. I think they've all got appeal to the same ground now, and all of it's going to be lies backwards and forwards as well, because they can't actually implement anything. They're just going to implement whatever AI tells them to implement eventually. And that'll be whoever's programming AI to say what to say. So, I mean, we go around in a big circle. I find, I mean, it's quite exciting at the same time to see a lot of this happening. I can see there's a lot of action going on behind the scenes. With especially when it comes down to implementation of policy. Do you think that any policy AI of the future is actually just going to be stating what it's been fed, and that's probably going to be World Economic Forum policy ideas?
Yeah, I think it's doesn't have a mind of its own. It's just they lie. Eric Schmidt has said in the past. He's written books on AI with Kissinger and all that gang. And he said we want Google. You see how ChatGPT is effectively the next iteration of the search engine. So it's like the search engines are going to be done away with, and it's ChatGPT is the new Google search. And he said that they want. I mean, I love the 2000s. You remember the Wild West of the internet. You can, and I loved that type of system where I could type in some conspiracy term I was searching and go down the rabbit hole and get literally, 1,000 hits and I would always find the good stuff a few pages in.
Hmm.
It was never like you. I knew automatically the first 10 results. Forget that. Let's keep digging. Like it's on the second or third or fourth or fifth page. I'd find some forum which had a link to
23rd, it'll be on the 24th page.
right, and it's like, but now it's like they don't even show this. And if you go to search engine, it's literally it says we got like 10,000 searches, but you can't go past page 5 anymore. And Schmidt said we want you to type something in, and we give you one result, which is the truth according to them. According to them, and
Yeah,
that's
we
what
are right. You are wrong.
yeah, and so I'm forgetting now. Yeah, AI, and so I think AI is basically they're telling us, oh, it's this neutral thing that organically brings the best together. And I think no, it's simply a tool that they're going to wield to control us, and they can make it say whatever they want whenever they want. And I don't think it's going to have its own consciousness. If we go a little esoteric, maybe down the line, yeah, I believe as a Christian, I believe in demons are real entities, or spirits, and fallen angels. Maybe there's going to be some crazy thing that happens where uh, some AI or cyborg gets inhabited by Lucifer or demon, but beyond that, it's kind of like I just think AI is just their tool for control. I think of it more as automated and intelligence. It's just allowing them to sift through the data quicker. It makes a lot of mistakes. So it's going to be like the movie Brazil, or it's going to be Kafka-esque, where you'll be blacklisted for even if you've done nothing wrong, and there will be little recourse, right, to fix it. And even Zoom, like just yesterday, Zoom updated and it looks completely different. And now there's an AI companion now pegged into Zoom, and I think you're going to see that popping up in apps and everywhere. It's going to be like an AI companion, and it's going to be like basically the little spy for them. You're going to have this little AI spy with you watching everything that you do. Windows 11 now, they're going to have that built in so they can see everything you're doing. And it's like we got to switch to Linux, and it's getting crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born blacklisted, so it's okay. It's okay. It'll just be continuing on as I am currently. It'll just be automatic blacklisted still. Um, so you open up a little bit of a. I mean, that's a big one, isn't it? What do you see if you in a religious context? Where do you think we are?
I like to, how would I say, on paper, basically, I'm a fundamentalist, Christian. Um, and I take a lot of the Bible literally. Of course, there's way, I'm like a Baptist evangelical type. And I do think, you look at prophecy that the trajectory is pretty much, you look at the book of Daniel and Revelation and Matthew, that, it says, it implies we're going to end up in a world totalitarian state, and then Christ will return at some point. Um, I found interesting thought exercises of 2030s is an interesting time, because I mentioned Ken Ham earlier. I think I believe the Earth was created. Um, I pretty much am running with the theory that it's a young Earth, 6,000 years, right? And if you count, like, the analogies that the Earth was created in 6 days, and you interpret different things in different ways, but it talks about one day could be 1,000 years. And so if we are 6,000 years old since the Garden of Eden, 2,000 years, so 4,000 years, and Christ comes, it's been 2,000 years. That would be like a completion of 6 days. And then it talks about a millennium, right? When Christ returns, you have 1,000 years of peace. It could be interpreted that, and Christ died around 33 years, 30 some years. So the 2030s would be sort of like completing six days, or and Christ around the time of Christ's death and resurrection. So some people are saying it's possible that Christ might be returning in the 2030s. There's a Messiah 2030s YouTube channel is very popular that explains this in depth. Someone, a Christian account, a popular Christian account, pointed out, why are the elites obsessed with 2030? They're so obsessed with 2030 to have their world government in place. They're building their doomsday bunkers. Here's an interesting one for you. The U.S. Space Force was created recently, And I just read this week, China is now creating a planetary defense force. So like all of the countries now creating these planetary defense forces, and they're talking about
Are they
asteroids.
defending themselves from Jesus?
No, I mean this is an interesting thought
This is-
exercise. Like I don't think
yeah.
about this often, but I'm just thinking like it makes logical sense because there's nothing really out there to fight against. But at the same time, Musk is like we gotta hurry by 2030 install the world government and create these defense forces. And there's asteroids coming, and they're building doomsday bunkers, and it's almost like they're preparing for the second coming, and they're gonna try to like nuke Jesus, while they hide in their bunkers. For me, it makes, there's a certain logic to it. And, 2030s might come and go, and Jesus hasn't arrived yet. So I find that as one plausible scenario. But, if he doesn't return in the 2030s, it's like, okay, it's not time yet. But, um, yeah, I think we are working towards this world state. And you see the stuff that's going on in Israel now. Um, they're talking about, they're ready to build a third temple, and all this sort of stuff. So we are moving towards, I think, the end of history. But I've interviewed on my podcast Pastor Artur Pawlowski, the Canadian pastor whose church they tried to shut down, and Patrick Wood, and they're both Christians, and they both said that Satan has been working throughout history like in waves, right? He'll build the Roman Empire, and then it collapses. And then he'll come back around with the Holy Roman Empire, which is even bigger and badder, but that collapses. And then the British Empire, which is even bigger, right? And then the American Empire, which is even bigger, until finally he gets the world empire. But Hitler didn't succeed for whatever reason, and we pushed back. It could have been God said it's not time yet. Plus, people are pushing back, and we bought ourselves another 50, 100 years. So both Pawlowski and Patrick Wood, I think, argued that it could be now, or given our pushback, and God's timing, it could be another who knows when. So it's kind of like generational, right? And I've talked to Robin Monotti on my podcast who brought up Umberto Eco, Eternal Fascism, how every generation has to stave off evil. And again, my background is perfect example of that, being a Croatian, where we're fighting this evil now. In the 90s, when I was a kid, we had the war in Yugoslavia. My uncle, who's still alive, he fought off the Serbs, the collapse of communism. My grandfather was a prisoner of the Nazis in the 1940s. My great-grandfather died as a result of World War I. And so it's just like every generation, we have this fight to push back this wave of insanity. But I think ultimately, as a biblical world, you look at the book of Daniel, which talks about the statue and the dream, and you've got the gold and the bronze, and the two legs that break off and the 10 toes. And I think we are at the 10 toes stage. And so, but for me, it's the best of times and the worst of times. It's like you said earlier, it's it's
It's
it's
wild times.
it's scary, but at the same time, if you look at it the other way, sometimes I thought it'd be amazing to have lived during the time of Jesus, but also how many people back then or other times of history, if would say it'd be cool to live the time that we're living in too, to see all the madness that we're seeing. So,
I wonder how much of the information will make it out of it. I mean, what this totalitarian state looks like and how it manufactures the information, pumps it out. I wonder if anybody will ever know, or if these things will have to be handed down by word of mouth and stories from distant relatives and etc. Maybe that's um, I have a hard time trying to understand in a religious context. I left the religious books behind, but in a spiritual context, I feel that the religious books have caught up with me. So everybody I speak to who is of a religious ilk, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds roughly like what we're about to go through. And when I've rationalized that, I've come to the same conclusion. It's like, what can you do? We are going through wild times. These may be the end days. And so in that case, put on your best shoes. That's all you can do is put on your best shoes.
I'm gonna, yeah, put on your best shoe. I always say just grab the popcorn, your favorite beverage, put on your best shoes, and enjoy the show. So I'm not like depressed of or anything about it. there are times where, like the COVID times where it gets intense, and you got to think about how you're going to survive. But I'm not freaking out. I have some listeners who send me stuff and they try to scare me to death, like with all this giga nano, stuff. And I'm like, and it's like, read these videos and be scared. And I'm like, no, no. Jesus, he repeated so many times, like, do not be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be of good cheer. And it's like, I reject from alt media any spirit of fear. So my feeling is like, landing, being a soldier landing on D-Day on Normandy or in the Sparta fight. It's just like, give it all you got. Run up that hill with a smile on your face, basically. So.
Well, I know that I'm gonna at the end of the day. I mean, when it was COVID, what you had is you had community. You had your community round by you. You had the people you could trust and the people you couldn't trust, and they were very clear. In the next crisis, it'll be exactly the same. You'll have community. Keep having every time you're attacked, you'll have the people standing next to you who are also being attacked, and the people standing behind you, in front of you, so on. We all come out of it on the other end just a bit wiser, we like to think, but it seems to be a reoccurring theme that we don't learn our lessons very easily as human beings. It is, I can see how it can be pretty depressing, but I'm very much in the same boat as you. I like to be very optimistic and positive. I love the fact that you're optimistic and positive. What are you going to do with the near future then? Have you got any big plans coming up?
No, just I've lately, like I said earlier, I'm not keen on traveling. Like I've seen enough of the world, number one. Number two, of course, the financial aspect. But number three, I just enjoy being the simple things in life now. I'm in a time where I'm just enjoying being at home with family, enjoying cups of coffee, good food, good rest, good sleep, and that's where I'm at now, and just just keeping on trucking with geopolitics and empire, and seeing where I can. It's a slow process. I have these. Hold on. It's you can't do anything really quick, but bit by bit, having fun building the podcast. I just bought these, which sent me back a couple $100, but these, Rode wireless professional
Oh, Rode
mics
wireless.
and
I got
and
a
so
Rode box with little things I can press and make sounds. Very
yeah,
impressive.
and so it's like now, and I learned how to record in-person interviews. So I'll probably be in Europe this summer in Croatia, and so I'm hoping to see what interesting characters will be around that I'll be able to interview in person. But yeah, no other grand plans other than to just keep on trucking and enjoying the simple life for
Have
now.
you
But
you thought about writing some books?
yeah, I thought about maybe doing a course and writing a book, but it's funny. I don't like to force anything. I don't think sometimes it's good to force things. And I often think about, what will I write about? And then so many people that I've interviewed have written fantastic books and so on a lot of these same subjects. And I'm just thinking like, well, he did such a great job. What am I going to write about? So I think eventually, if it happens, it'll the way I see it is it's got to be this urge within you
Mhm.
that has to get out there. Like the podcast, I started this in 2012, YouTubing, and then the podcast in 2015 was formalized. And I did it as a hobby. I was working full time. I never got paid for geopolitics and empire back then. And, you got a full time job, you get married, you have kids. And there was this urge within me, like I have to do another podcast. I don't get paid for it. It's literally moonlighting. I'm working moonlight hours, midnight, 1 a.m., editing the podcast, doing the recording, and I don't get any financial benefit from it. But there's this urge within me, like I gotta get this out. And so until I get that urge for a book, I think I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. But yeah, slowly, all of us see where we can. I know you got your truth bomb thing, right? Going, and so each of us sort of add on things as we go. But
So
hopefully
this
one
is
day.
This is one of the sounds I got on my soundboard,
So if he penetrates the cabinets,
which is, of course, a truth bomb sound. There, you did mention a truth bomb. I would say a couple of things. First of all, I get a feeling that people like us write a book without realizing we're starting to write a book. We're already walking a path, doing the research, putting in the hard hours, and we come out the other side and we're like, oh, I may as well write all of this down because now this makes a coherent, uh, like it makes sense. So I felt the same way as you probably a couple of years ago, but now I think I'm probably in the process of writing 3 or 4 books, and I just didn't really accept it. And I think you might end up getting there, but yeah, you will definitely have to come on Truth Bomb. I look forward to that. In actual fact, this podcast we're recording now is due to go out at a time when Truth Bomb will already be out. People will already be indulging the silliness that is Truth Bomb. So hopefully, I'm trying to get you hooked up against versus Jason Bamas. We've got some good people around us. I mean, that's one of the good things, isn't it? It's not all terrible. Just on the way out, let's have a little quick conversation, though. I mean, who do you think is important to listen to at the moment? Which direction are you going in? Who do you like that's new on the indie media scene? Have you got any sort of direction you can point people down the rabbit
I
hole?
like to listen to a broad swath of people, big and small. And going back to what you were saying earlier, I don't have any patience for people who are narcissistic or egotistical. And I like, it's a biblical principle too. Like I like we're all on the same level. At the end of the game, the king and the pawn go in the same box, right? Italian proverb. Um, and so I like spending time with the poor, the meek and the humble. And even if I translate that to like the podcasting space, like I'll invite on, I had Robert Kaplan, globalist historian, on my podcast recently. I've had ambassadors, I've had big alt media names, and then I'll pluck little accounts, people who've got tiny accounts, and have them on because they're doing good analysis. I had Nick Hayes of Hayes Reviews on recently. I just discovered this guy. What's his name? I don't even know their names, because I'm just discovering them. You've probably heard of him, Night's Watch N8. This guy who just got a show on David Icke's program, Seven C's, the number seven and C's. But yeah, I listen, everything from Johnny Vedmore to, yeah, I do listen to a good portion of Christian alt media too, as well. Patrick Wood does these prophecy roundtables once a month, and so it's really across the board. And also listening to some mainstream stuff. Here's a good quote I shared recently. Harold Malmgren. So he just passed. His daughter is Pippa Malmgren. People might know her from the World Government Summit a few years ago. She talked about CBDCs. But she said one thing that her father, Harold, said: there's the news as reported on the front page, and then there's what actually happened. You need to know both. So this is why I get irked when some of my subscribers say, why did you share this BBC article? Why did you share this, CNN article? It's like, well, part of what they say is true, and even if it's not entirely true, you need to know why they're saying this. I can't just share RT. RT is also propaganda, and so it's kind of like you got to look at everything. So, but yeah, my list is too long. I don't lean on just one person. I basically look at what everyone is saying, and there's just so many people. It's like I follow. You can look at see who I follow and share. So basically, whether it's on my Substack notes or Telegram or X. So
I know the feeling though. I know it's the broad pool nowadays is a load of different people who are trying really hard to get some good stuff out there and do a lot of these guys are starting in. They probably got a little bit of we may have a head start, but they've got the technology on their side now, and it's much easier to produce high quality stuff at a fairly low price. Cameras and microphones and all of this. You know, you're talking about your little gizmos there that you can actually interview people. I've got one of those. I got quite a nice DJI camera, and I got those, and I got to use them more. I got to use them more. Fantastic, that thing of being able to speak with people in real life, in impromptu or semi transitional areas, or in public. Just it's a different way of conversing. It has a different reaction. It causes people to get really, really into something or give answers that aren't necessarily what they'd give normally. Very interesting. Anyway, I listen, it's been lovely to speak with you. It's been really nice because it's been a while since we spoke. So it's really nice. Well, I mean, we've seen each other on a podcast or two around, but to speak one-on-one, it's been quite a while. And I hope we get to speak again sometime soon when you come on Truth Bomb.
Yeah, I guess soon on Truth Bomb. Yeah, you've been on my podcast twice, and then I was on your TNT show, and then we from time to time I will be in the same group live streams. What was the last time with
I think it was
Hesher,
a Boiler Room.
Who's awesome. Yeah,
they're actually Ruckus and Hesher are the second Truth Bomb show. It's a pretty close fight. I mean, it was just basically brother on brother action. And it was
that's good. That sounds like a lot of fun. So I wish you success with the Truth Bomb. It sounds like a lot of fun.
A great reset for the post-Corona era.